This is Billy. At a young age, Billy swore to never attack anyone after he hurt his brother in an accident. He has no enemies. Billy's father looked at him and he said, "Billy, you idiot, Billy! How are you gonna get stronger if you don't defeat monsters? As a pacifist?" Billy knew his father was right. Or was he? Can you beat Deepwoken without attacking? To be honest with you, I was very skeptical if this was even possible. It seemed way too big of a task. Billy has to defeat every boss in the game without dealing damage himself directly. So how do you do that? What if I was to tell you there is a way? There's an enchant in the game called Providence Thorns, which allows the player to essentially deal damage back just by parrying the attacks of enemies. So with this, it just seemed a lot more possible for Billy to actually complete this challenge. And there's more we can utilize that we can get to later in the video too. So here's Billy's journey through the Deepwoken Pacifist run. Before Billy can start his journey, we need to make sure that he can have the Providence Thorn weapon right out of the gate. Prior to starting a new life after your slot has wiped in Deepwoken, you can actually pass down up to 4 items of your choosing. His ancestor Frank leaves him with one of the most valuable tools for the start of his journey. Providence Thorn will be our main source of damage, but it's not the only one Billy will be utilizing. First, we invested in intelligence and charisma. The intelligence stat allows us to obtain the mantra Predict, and by investing in charisma, the oath Vision Shaper. Predict acts as a low damage counter, offering Billy a better safety net to stay alive and retaliate by defending himself. The oath Vision Shaper is based on illusion summons. With this, Billy can summon servants to fight for him instead of fighting himself. I also chose the Lone Warrior origin for Billy, along with the Vow of Thorns Echo modifier to accelerate his progression, and the Survivalist and Autodidact boons, which we'll discuss later. With that, Billy was ready to go. He went straight into the Trial of One, which went a lot smoother for Billy than I had anticipated. He defeated Sharko, the Arisia Golems, the Thresher, the 2 Angels, the Sandstone Knight, and the Alpha Sharko on his first try. During the trial, he got the mantra Predict and the talent Neural Overload, which will come in handy later in the progression. Usually people would leave the trial at like level 6 out of 20, but Billy left at level 8 due to the Autodidact boon that I mentioned earlier, which, if you don't know, it allows us to invest 3 of our 15 points every level a bit earlier. After that, Billy headed straight towards Etris to get some clothes, visit the barber, and prepare and gather some ingredients for potions that he might need later on. Billy now just has to do some grinding to prepare for his boss fights, which shouldn't be too hard. He headed to Songseeker Isles where he fought a bunch of mages, well, until he got EXP softlock. Since Billy wasn't fighting normally, he was actually gaining less experience points to level up. So with this, Billy was ready to take on his first boss fight. He sailed all the way to Monkey Spa to fight Primadon. To summon Primadon, he needed a resource called Umbral Obsidian, but luckily for him, he found some very generous people who also just defeated Primadon themselves. They offered their unwanted loot, which also included some of that Umbral Obsidian. Naturally, Billy prepared some healing potions to make sure he can stay alive during the fight. Since Billy was low level, he wasn't doing as much damage as he should, so the fight did get tedious at times. The only thing he would have to worry about was timing his parries so he doesn't lose. Yeah, he does that much damage per hit. Throwing him in the pit with Primadon might have not been the brightest move this early on in the progression. It was starting to get very dangerous for Billy. He got hit by the only unparryable move Primadon has, and it knocks him out, sending him flying across the monkey's paw. He quickly gets up, prepares for Primadon's approach again. It's a good thing that he made those healing pots, otherwise this would have gone completely south so quickly. The parry trades continue, and then he did it. Billy defeated his first boss only at half the max level. Now that we know we can kill him, we did end up grinding him over and over again until we get better XP and better gear for Billy. There were some dangerously close calls, but it all worked out in the end. After he finished grinding, he headed to the Starset Valley where he rerolled away some useless talents, did a bit of fishing, and upgraded his mantras like Predict. It was also about time Billy started working towards getting his Oath Vision Shaper for some of these boss fights in the future. First, we headed towards Heroes Valley to complete Alita's game, which is one of the first requirements for Vision Shaper. Next, we needed to get some Dark Feathers and Void Feathers. To get them, we need to keep killing this entity known as the Deep Owl. There is a stagnant spawn right outside of the Lord's Grove, so I just kept farming that over and over again. When Billy finished that, he headed straight to the depths. He made his way to the Spider Cave where the Vision Shaper Oath is. It's called a Spider Cave because there's always a giant spider that spawns here. He found the person right outside who warned Billy that the spider inside is corrupted, which means it has 3 times its original HP amount and does nearly double damage. But was Billy scared? Nah, he'd win. He dashed right past the widow, went straight to the trainer, and swore his allegiance to the hive mind. Upon doing so, he was ready to face the widow with his newly obtained Vision Shaper oath. Yeah, he nearly died fighting it, so he just got out of there instead. Going up to the trial to enter back into the surface, he had to fight a corrupted Bone Keeper, one of the tougher fights even through normal fighting. But for some reason, I got teleported out from a glitch. This isn't the only time it happens either, it just happens every time a servant is summoned. It's a super strange bug and I did end up reporting it, so hopefully it gets patched soon. Next up on the fight list for Billy was the Duke. I was a little worried since he has an auto parry barrier that you would normally break by attacking it over and over again. I wasn't sure how Providence Storm would react with it, so it was a bit of a risk, but that's why I got the Vision Shaper oath before fighting this boss. Since now we have the Illusionary Servants, I can put that Neural Overload talent to good use. I modified the mantra by adding 4 Eternal Logstones and 4 Aeon Logstones. Doing this, the servants should last a lot longer. I also added a blue gem to it, making sure it doesn't cost too much ether to cast a spell. Check out how long they lasted against this strange crab. They offer Billy a lot of time, so now he can drink potions knowing he is safe. I got some health potions ready and headed straight to the Duke's manor, and oh boy. The minions guarding the manor were such a pain. To keep these enemies knocked on the ground, Billy needed to swing at them, but that goes against his moral code. So I had to time every parry and every prediction perfectly. It was satisfying when I landed my predict, since it would just keep going off thanks to the successive prediction talent I got. Once I got inside to the actual dungeon itself, the golems were an easy pass. They had the same moveset as the normal Arisia golems, so the spinning arm moves they have ended up just shredding their own HP after every parry I did. Billy ran past the optional golem fights and came face to face with the Duke. I replenished my food and armor and got ready for the fight. To chip it down, I made sure to summon my clones the second they were off cooldown. Every time I landed a parry, it would also hit the barrier, so this was good news. At some point, it was starting to get very difficult since the barrier didn't seem to go down after a while. I had to already pop 2 health pots for Billy. Not to mention, sometimes the servants would not even target the Duke, but target the minions inside the tubes. At half HP, Billy finally broke the Duke's barrier. After a while, the Duke started to spawn in his minions. To make sure they don't keep getting up and being a nuisance, I set it up so the Duke can be the one to execute them instead. As the Duke rushed Billy over and over again, throwing punches left and right, Billy would deflect those punches till eventually the Duke fell to his own attacks. The fight with the Duke took about 12 minutes to defeat, which isn't too bad. The entire time Billy was progressing, I was investing his stat points into light weapon proficiency and not medium weapon. The reason I did this was to actually get myself dual-wield handguns, but servants do only about 1/3 of your original damage. If you have dual guns or rifles, the servants actually do the full damage as if it was the player himself attacking. It's a really strange bug and definitely not an intended feature, but Billy needed any advantage he could get to prove that becoming a pacifist is possible. Now that I defeated the Duke, I had enough experience points to equip the Dragoon handguns. I then had Billy sail across the sea to meet his next boss, the Ferryman. The Fairman was a lot more difficult than I had initially anticipated. For starters, the only multi-hit move he has a very tight parry window, making survivability my top priority. I had to focus on only small chip damage since there was no reliable way to dish out big damage points. Not to mention, I have almost 0 time to summon my clones since he would just zip away so quickly. But I had to wait for this one lightning rush attack move just to make sure I can deal damage. It stayed this way for about 11 minutes until I reached his second phase. In this phase, he goes really quickly. All of his moves come out a lot faster, but he lingers a bit longer. Not only that, he gains 1 brand new move. He throws these pinkish javelins at you that do about 2 bars, so trying to parry them is too much of a risk. Instead, I opted to use Predict on them if I can get the chance to. Not only that, I can now summon my clone since he did linger a bit longer between moves. Then at the 24-minute mark, Billy finally defeated a Ferryman. As an added bonus, he got this really rare legendary weapon called the Storm's Eye, so that's cool. And I'll be giving it away to one of my channel members in the Discord. At the time of recording this, they added a shadow update boss to the game. I decided to save that boss for last in the overworld since I was already pretty close to this next boss fight. I found the guy farming at Monkey's Paw and asked if he could summon the boss for me. If you don't know, to encounter the Dread Serpent, you could just sail in the Void Sea and eventually he would spawn for you. Or you can pick up this somewhat rare item and just spawn him instead. I was grinding it at Monkey's Paw, but it just didn't drop for me. But luckily we found someone who already had it. He also agreed not to help us since we're doing the Pacifist run alone. We went to the cheese location for the Dread Serpent, which is only west of the Monkey's Paw. Normally to cheese him, you would sit on top of this large rock and just swing down at him since none of his moves can reach you. But of course this goes against the challenge, so we just had to jump down and fight him in the waters. I won't lie, this was by far the hardest one. I couldn't fully utilize my clones too much since it would just mess up Kaido's sense of aim, and he ended up just baiting out my parries. For what felt like the majority of the fight, Billy was less than a bar of HP. I would use the mantra Illusionary Realm, which would keep me from dying. But it ended at such poor timing that Billy got knocked out. I thought for sure it was over for Billy, but I guess Kaido just didn't see him under the ice or something because he didn't end up finishing the job. You could imagine my reaction as Billy was just sitting there a-okay. At this point I was thinking he's gotta be the luckiest character in all of Deepwoken. That was until a lionfish with a shadow modification spawned to help Kaido. At 1% of his HP left, Billy needed to lock in here, otherwise it was over for him. And with a couple parries later while avoiding Kaido, he got it. Since he got the lionfish, he healed a lot of HP from it. No more interruptions, and with 2 more swings, Kaido had felled. At this point, Billy was max level and ready to take on the last boss in the overworld. The last boss is the new one, Mysterio Evangard. I had a feeling this boss was going to be easy because he has a bunch of multi-hit moves and we have Providence Storm to parry every single one of those. So it shouldn't be too... I might have spoken too soon because he does a lot of damage. Billy was sent to the depths, he had to go escape, and then come back to fight him one more time. I did end up losing again, so I had a different approach. Instead, Billy would jump into his multi-hit moves just to parry them and do as much damage as possible. And it worked out. We managed to beat him in only under 2 minutes this time. And now, it was time to head to the depths to face the final 2 bosses of the challenge. Here is where my survivalist boon comes in handy. If you stay too long outside in the environment of layer 2, you'll eventually die from snow parasites. But with the survivalist boon, I can stay up twice as long and keep up fights that are required to progress forward. There is a bone keeper that guards a bridge that I need to pass in order to go fight Chaser. The fight took a bit, but the only reason I even managed to stay alive was because I had that survivalist boon. After Billy beat the bone keeper without attacking, he headed straight to Chaser. It was finally time. I knew the last 2 fights were going to be really tedious, but man, the only time I could even do damage to him was when he actually fell down from the sky and landed on the ground. When he's on the ground, you're actually meant to go up to him and attack him because he's vulnerable and won't fight back. Thing is, this is the only time you can actually do damage to him. This means I had to rely on these RNG parry timings where he would attack me right before he falls down. I knew this was going to be a problem from the beginning, so this is why I got the illusionary servants with the Dragoon guns. Billy first broke all the jars around to make sure Chaser wasn't healing constantly. But even without the jars, he sure felt like he was immortal. His first phase took about 20 minutes. This was a good sign because now I knew that we're getting somewhere with all these parries and servants. What made the fight annoying was that the servants would just not spawn sometimes. It was a weird interaction or some kind of bug, but I don't know. They did clutch up for Billy, however, since it was the clones that did the final blow to Chaser. The final boss was up next. Keep in mind, if Billy dies here, he will be wiped. Similar to Chaser, you can only deal damage to Etheron during certain phases. To beat him, you're supposed to hit him during his chained up phase. Any other form of damage that isn't in that phase doesn't count as real damage, meaning that if I parry him any other time, it won't do any damage to him. He does throw in a punch, and if you parry that, it will do damage, but that's the only other exception. My servants are also useless here since that if you summon them, they'll just run to the main body and they can't physically reach it since he's floating in the air. It seems impossible, but there is actually a way to do damage even as a pacifist. The strategy is, before placing the last bone to chain him up, you need to wait for this move that has a lot of wind-up to it. It's a move that lingers after it's launched, meaning that if we time it correctly, after he shoots up that orb and I place a bone in, we can actually start parrying this orb to deal damage to Etheron. And after the first orb, it seemed to have worked because slashes started to appear on Etheron after the parries were finished. But it wasn't looking too good. Billy wasn't doing so hot, his HP was low, and he couldn't even get the first bone in. Billy began to think that maybe his father was right. It's just not possible? Was there no way that he could stay as a pacifist? Then he heard a voice. Billy, listen, Billy. I'm sorry. I was wrong, Billy. I was just trying to look out for you, Billy. I wanted you to become strong, and I didn't think it was possible as a pacifist. But you've proven me wrong, Billy. You've proven that you can become strong even as a pacifist. Do something that I couldn't do. As who you are, Billy. And with that, he got his second win. Billy had unlocked his resonance. It seemed dire, but Billy now has the determination he needs to defeat the Scion of Etheron, parry after parry, around 30 giant orb nukes. Billy defeated the drowned god, ran across the fields, reaching the end. When he finally got out, he was welcomed by his brother and father, tears down his eyes. This was the legend of Billy, the pacifist.